Hello and welcome to the Offside Line Pod with David Barnes and me, Pete Burns. If you enjoy what we do, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode and tell your friends, family, teammates, clubmates and the people you sit next to in the stand all about us. And if you'd like to leave a positive review, it would really help us with the old algorithm as it helps other people find us. Thanks for listening, and here's today's show.
It's the offside line.
This is not soccer. Is that clear?
Utmost danger. Danger could be there. It's a try. A magnificent try for the 21-year-old.
Brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant.
This episode of the Offside Line is brought to you by Village Health and Wellness Clubs in Edinburgh. Get summer ready and enjoy a club stacked with premium kit, a brand new box and burn studio for the ultimate combat style workouts, plus spanking new bikes in the group cycling studio. Ready for action. Barney, I can see you already getting absolutely beach ready with Village Health and Wellness Clubs in Edinburgh. You can gym, swim, throw shapes or get your chill on from just £50 per month. Summer's coming, Barney. Get ready to dig out those short shorts. Are you excited? I'm going to be joining. This sounds great. I'm going to be looking fantastic on the beach this summer.
I'm not sure that they'll want either of you or me in our short shorts on the venue. It's not that might.
Tell you what, you never know. We could do some incredible transformation. Do you see Ben Shepherd doing Maxim or something recently? What Men's Health? And
No.
he looked. He's aged 50 something, and he looks absolutely incredible. That could be us, Barney.
Let's make it our summer quest.
It's just £50 per month. Let's go and do it.
Right.
Perfect.
I'm not promising to do anything, but it does sound like a great deal. I'm with you on that. It sounds like a great opportunity. Anybody that's looking to get beach ready or just get fit over the summer, go for it. I'm not committing, not because I don't think it sounds like a great deal. I'm just not sure about my own.
You've got a busy summer with the Lions, Barney,
Yeah.
and the Scotland tour to cover. But healthy mind, healthy body, all that kind of thing. So maybe I'm going to twist your arm and get you down to
Bully me along.
Village Health and Wellness Clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this week, my friend, how are you? I see you're supping on a glass of red wine. I'm extremely jealous of that. I could do with one of those right now. It is Tuesday evening, I think. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. I've kind of lost track of time completely with what I'm doing right now. But tell me about you, first of all.
Okay, we will ask what you're doing because I think what you're doing is far more interesting. I'm just back at home. I've been out and about today. I did have a meeting earlier on today with the big boss, Elaine Hamilton, who doesn't often get a mention. Who was kind of giving me all the kind of the non-editorial jobs that I need to get through, and then just back home and having a glass of wine because I had a quiet week. I was out on Friday lunchtime, which turned into Friday night, and I've been living low since then. So I kind of felt, and it's the Hoyt Common riding coming up this weekend.
Who were you out with? Who were you out with?
Guess who? It's a friend, the greatest friend of the pod. It wasn't actually with Jamie Lindsay, but it was a Doddy Weir long lunch at Prestonfield House, which had been organised by Jamie Lindsay and the Breadalbin guys. Yeah. I got in trouble the other day because did we talk about that? How we always pronounce it wrong?
Yes.
I think it's both. So anyway,
I think I managed to pronounce it correctly last time on the pod, but yeah, Breadalbin.
Yeah. Did I not talk about this before? I was at Melrose Sevens and. I was chatting to Jamie, bumped into Jamie, and he introduced me to a girl called Siobhan Petrie, who kind of works with him. She's heavily involved in organising Melrose Sevens, and we talked about the Melrose Sevens that week, obviously. And she said, "I really like the pod, but I need to have a word with you, David Barnes." And I thought I was in trouble. And she said, "Why do you keep on calling it Breadalbine? It's Breadalbine." And I was like, I didn't know that.
You call it Breadalbane.
Breadalbane,
which I did as well, to be fair.
Breadalbane.
Yeah, but you
probably because I did it. But I said to you, he never told me, he never corrected me. So I'm blaming him. But apparently everybody did correct me and I just carried on blindly ignoring it. I would say Breadalbane and they'd say what is it? Breadalbane?
You say Breadalbane and they'd say Breadalbane. Yes.
And then I'd ignore them and carry on talking, not listen. Because
We'll get
that's my style.
We'll get it right eventually.
Right, anyway, that's free advertising for Breadalbane. So basically, Jamie had organised it. I was at a table with some of the Offside Line people we'd taken along as a bit of a thank you, and a few other people. Freddie Main, do you know Freddie Main?
Yes, he's a great guy.
Yeah,
great guy.
Yeah. Who, if you're wanting any kind of rugby medals, was it Silver Fox medals? Is it?
Oak and Black.
Oak and Black. Silver Fox is his coaching thing. Anyway, sitting next to Freddie, and just as you'd expect, a fun day out, great entertainment, good speakers.
Who do they have?
Right, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but is it David Zweel?
Oh, David Shui, I think it is.
Yeah, David Shui.
Who's very sadly got motor neuron disease, but he's an incredible, inspiring guy.
Unbelievable. What a guy. I'm feeling terrible that I pronounced his name wrong there, although he seems like quite a good guy, and so I'm sure you'll forgive me, especially because I'm about to
I
smoke up his ass.
So I apologise as well if I've got it wrong, but as an individual, like, so impressive, incredible.
Yeah. So this guy got his diagnosis quite soon after or before Doddy. He was living in London, came back up, attended the first kind of Doddy cycle down in the Borders, and afterwards kind of introduced himself, and he spoke through his whole story. And I wouldn't want to. This guy could tell the story far better than I did, but I mean, it was brilliant. He just had like you could hear a pin drop in the place because the guy was just so honest, so reasonable, and just dealt a devastating hand and just such a positive attitude about it. And it was right at the very end, and he said something along the lines of, he goes, things like this happen to you, and you can either let it beat you, knock you down, or apologize, or you can get fucking after it. And I just the whole place went, you could just feel the whole place just rooting for the guy. So anyway, I really, really enjoyed it was a question and answer with him. I think, was it Caroline Blair who hosted that? I can't remember who was. Anyway, she hosted one of them, but she was involved. Anyway, it was brilliant. It was Kenny. Was it Kenny Lowe? No, Kenny. Anyway, I can't remember who's host. I was only interested in this guy because his chat was amazing. And it was just then there was a charity auction with Willie Allen, and I didn't buy anything because the offside line doesn't make that much money.
Because you're tight.
Yeah, because I'm tight. And the offside line, the offside line does not make that kind of money because there was some very good prizes you don't buy the prizes, but it's prizes or awards.
Auction items.
Auction
items. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So a good day out. Good fun had by all, and so.
And you've just managed to finally choke down a mouthful of wine since then.
I mean, I could have had a drink early in the week, but I'm not rabid about drinking, Pete. I just thought, after Friday, I had a good kick of the ball, so I took Saturday easy,
good.
And Sunday and Monday. Now it's coming up to Common Riding Weekend. Like Common Riding Weekend, Barney Senior has insisted.
I hope the weather's going to be all right for Barney Senior and all the.
I'm not sure.
Oh no.
Yeah, I've not actually checked. I dread to think, but I thought I should just do a bit of a warm up this evening. So I'll have a couple of glasses, but not go too wild.
You're an elite individual, David. Well done.
Yeah.
Get yourself ready.
Yeah, get yourself ready. And so where are you, Pete? Tell us about where you are.
I am in the bright lights of Nottingham. I've just arrived here. I am on it feels like day 1073, but it is actually only officially day 2 of my book tour this week. So I've got a new book that's coming out tomorrow, which is it's coming out this Thursday. So it's Tuesday today. I'm completely addled about what day it is.
Pete, your marketing people, your marketing people will not be happy that you don't even know what day your book's coming out on.
Yeah, no,
Thursday.
I do know what day it's coming out. I don't know what today is. That's the problem. But it's coming out on Thursday, the 5th of June, and it's a real departure from my previous stuff. So I've done now 11 non-fiction books, 10 on rugby, some with you, 1 on golf, and now I'm actually doing something which is why I got into writing and publishing in the first place, which is a middle grade fiction novel, a children's novel. So it's kind of like Harry Potter in terms of the length and in many ways kind of subject matter. So if any listeners out there have, maybe you are a reader of middle grade fiction yourself, but if you know anyone who might be interested, it is about a school for master criminals. It's called Shadow Thieves, and it's about a 13-year-old boy living on the streets of an alternate London in the 1930s. I've done this pitch quite a lot, Barney. I can see you smirking as I do this.
Well, I don't want to knock you off your stride, but I was remembering about a year ago, probably more than that. And I asked you about your book when we were leaving Glasgow. I was giving you a lift home, and you're still talking about it by the time we got back to Edinburgh. So I'm just But I believe that you're
short and sweet.
Yeah, I believe that your good other half has kind of managed to kind of chisel away
there. She has worked on this presentation with me. Yes, she has.
Okay, so get on with it, Pete.
So he's a 13-year-old boy living on the streets of an alternate London in the 1930s, picking pockets and scraping for survival. And ultimately, he gets recruited for an international school for thieves, which is part of a larger international criminal organisation called the Shadow League. So it's for kind of ages 10 up, so anyone who can read Harry Potter can definitely read this, and it is out on Thursday. It's called Shadow Thieves, so please go buy it. That would be lovely. offside liners. I'm not really sure the demographic of the offside line in my rugby writing really coalesces much with my fiction writing, but you never know.
I'm sure there's some proud parents and grandparents that have
Would love
kids
this.
who would love this. Yeah, absolutely.
So please go out and buy that. It'd be great. So so I'm on a book tour. So I was in Manchester Monday, Birmingham today, Nottingham tomorrow, Oxford Thursday, and Northampton Friday. So I feel like David Brent on his speaking tour. But it has been a huge success so far. I've done a load of schools and sold a load of books, which has been great. And been speaking to kind of like 200 children at a time, which is absolutely terrifying. But I've survived so far.
Are you having to give them a presentation? Are you speaking to them as well, or is it?
I'm speaking to them for like an hour, and then I do like a signing. Yeah, it's brutal. It's genuinely terrifying.
And have you got a Joe Biden? What was it? The Donald Trump keeps on accusing Joe Biden of having a kind of automatic pen or something because they're trying to suggest that he didn't sign any of these executive orders and all the laws.
Is that the latest?
Yeah,
is that the latest one? I hadn't heard that one.
So you should get one of these. I hope you've got one of those, Peter. Kind of save your arm.
No, but I mean, at this rate, honestly, I'm knackered. I sound like Joe Biden during the debates. Completely confused and lost about what I'm saying. But yeah, it's going well. And for those watching on YouTube and on the social media shorts, I'm in a lovely premiere in Nottingham, so it does not get more glamorous than this.
Yeah, living the dream, Barnsley. Living the dream.
Absolutely. Yeah. So everyone's probably fast forwarded through all this bit now, Barney. But let's get on to the rugby then. So let's start. In fact, let's jump quickly to Breadalbane again and Doddy because they're doing They're sponsoring a big My Name's Doddy Foundation fundraising cycle coming up. I think it's on the 15th of June. Is that right? Do you know more? Can you tell us more about that, or is that all we're going to say about it?
I think you could have told me you were going to ask me this. It's in Ireland, isn't it? I think they're doing the cycle. It's 555 miles, is that right? Because that was Doddy's number, wasn't it? And they're delivering the ball to the Lions match against Argentina on the 17th. Is that the 17th? Whatever.
That's right, yeah.
The Friday. But, so I think that's what it is. But it's one of these kind of crazy cycling challenges. And that's all I know at the moment. That's all. Okay. I'm sure it was talked a lot about. This lunch that I was at was quite heavily.
I was going to say, I bet they talked about chewed your ear off about it, Barney. But.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I mean, I think it was all part of it. It was all tied in together. In fact, I was sitting at somebody at my table who'd flown over from Ireland, who's doing the cycle to kind of support the dinner because it was so interlinked. But definitely worth supporting. That's all I can say on that matter.
We'll put some more accurate information in the show notes.
Okay. So
just scroll on your phone, just scroll down and have a look, and we'll put some stuff in there. Right, we're going to start off with Edinburgh's game on Saturday lunchtime. I think we said last week we expected a brave performance, but that we guessed it would probably ultimately end in defeat, and that's exactly what we got. They lost 42-33. It was an amazing match, very, very entertaining. The effort from the Edinburgh players was monumental, especially at that altitude that they have in Pretoria, and they scored some fantastic tries. I think they picked up 5 in total, but it just wasn't to be. And after some electric running from their backs, it was the Bulls' power that ultimately saw them home in the end. I mean, how do we reflect on Edinburgh's season there, Barney?
It feels a wee bit like that match kind of maybe summed up their season. You know, maybe not where they started, but where they ended, which was, you know, like there's something there, there's a bit of fight, there's a real spark there. But, you know, they kind of got into quite a strong position, didn't they? And then they lost 5 tries and the game got away from them. And then they kind of got back into it, and then there was a missed line out. And it just...
Yes, the classic. that old tale as old as time when it comes to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
The messed up line out in a very crucial attacking position.
Yeah.
And then it all goes tits up.
So I think that's where they are now, isn't it? They're a quarter-final team. You know, they were never going to win. Well, they weren't never going to win that, but they were always up against it in that game because they hadn't done enough early in the season. Mm-hmm. They are a team that had to play away from home in South Africa because, you know, they scraped into the playoffs. So they have to kick on from there. I think they're ahead of where they were this time last season. Ahead of where they are at the start of this season. But, you know, is the progress enough? You know, Jamie Ritchie's away next year. Who else is away?
That's a big loss.
Yeah, that's a big loss. They've not lost too many others. I mean, Boffelli, but he's hardly played. But I think something like Glasgow, they're going to have to kick on next year. But I think there's been enough progress for, I think, all the calls for Sean Everett's head and all that stuff, that's kind of subsided. I don't think, but I think the jury's still out. I think he's still got a lot to prove. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. And I think his job is safe. I think that's kind of been put to bed for the close season. It would be an astonishing decision, I think, to move him on because there's no one obvious waiting in the wings that can be scooped up. And I think he has proved that he has managed to turn this around. They've shown so much more grit and fight in recent weeks, as you say, and the attacking intent is improved immeasurably. I mean, we talked about that before. I think that lost to Zebre, and I think one of the things we said was how much can you blame the coach when they're attacking on the 5 metre line and they just, they seem to be incapable of putting together a backsline move or spreading it wide.
Yeah.
That cannot be. They cannot not be practicing that. So that is execution on the field, which they're failing to do. And you're kind of thinking he must have lost the changing room at this stage. They're just not listening to him, or whatever's happening is ineffectual. But they seem to have cottoned on to something now. So hopefully they can carry that on through pre-season and into next year.
Yeah, that's I suppose it's kind of the mystery is what has changed. Magnus Bradbury spoke really well about it. He's done it a couple of times and said, that I think it was after the Zebra game. The press were saying, or I think Sean Everett said in the press, that's on me. Just what you said there. Magnus Bradbury said as a kind of senior player group, we could have discussed that and said, well, that can't be on us. That can't be on him. We should be too good for that. If it's, and so they've grabbed. It feels to me like the players have grabbed the bull by the horns, but then you have to give credit to the coaching team because they've created an environment where they're doing that. We've all seen teams where the senior players haven't done that. So yeah. So I think it's just probably the right end to the season that Edinburgh have had. I think the fairly revelatory view.
They've hit their minimum expectations that I think certainly that we set at Christmas time. This is what they had to do to call the season a success. Obviously, success is winning a tournament, but that was unrealistic for where they were. So to get to this minimum standard and to be performing, they didn't just scrape in, on a dodgy decision, and you're thinking like, it's painting a much rosier picture than the reality is. I think they are exceeding that in the way they're playing. So, I think we've got to be pretty happy about where they are.
Yeah.
It's an improvement, and that's the main thing. They're on an upward trajectory.
Yeah. But there has been a lot of games there where you think, did they perform well there and not win? And that's the next step, isn't it? The Sharks game's the one that I loved the Shark games. I thought they were brilliant, the Sharks game, but they lost it. And it's in professional sport, we have to start saying, the next step is you don't lose those games.
Yeah. And then later in the day, Glasgow beat the Stormers 36-18. It was scintillating Glasgow at their very best, wasn't it? I mean, and it's remarkable. It's kind of like a rerun of last year as they slumped in form as they did last year in the kind of last weeks of the regular season and then bounced back spectacularly when it matters in the playoffs. And, all of Glasgow and Scottish rugby fans at large are going to be hoping that they can continue to mirror last season's success. But they've obviously got a major hurdle in front of them as they go to Dublin for the third time in 2 months? For the URC semi-final against Leinster. Obviously got absolutely demolished in the Champions Cup, came much closer 2 or 3 weeks ago, and hopefully they can reduce that margin and flip it just at the right moment. And it would be absolutely hilarious if Leinster finished the season yet again with no silverware.
That would be funny. I can't see it, Pete, but that would be funny. I mean, I think... that they did a lot better in that second game, and certainly Glasgow were more under strength in that second game than Leinster were. But Leinster did rest a few of the big dogs. But Leinster, it was also dead rubber for Leinster. And how many times against Irish teams have we seen, especially Scotland versus Ireland and whoever against Leinster is when the games really when everything's on the line, I just think the Irish power up front, Leinster and Ireland power up front, Scottish teams can't cope with it. You know, Xander's not going to be back. Xander Fagerson's still not going to be back. Murphy Walker had a bit of a hit. You know, Murphy's hardly played any rugby in the last 2 years. He's a young prop who's hardly played any. Actually, not in the last 2 years in his senior career, because he had, you know, he had a lot of injuries. Came back, you know, got into Scotland, got a couple of caps. Was injured for 2 years again, and he had a really tough time. I think Schickerling's injured, is he? Or Schickerling and
he's got a foot injury.
yeah. And Talakai, he got an arm injury, and I saw Nigel Carolan saying, you know, we'll just have to manage it. Hopefully he'll be okay. So, like, there's a bit of an issue there at tight head prop. And, you know, and I just think Leinster power up front will be interesting, but I just can't see it. I'd love to be. Yeah. What do you think?
Oh no, I don't. I can't see it. I mean, like, Leinster have to win the tournament. They have to. For all the investment and all the, you know, how good. I mean, it's also remarkable. Like, if you think about the last 3-4 years where they haven't had a title, just how dominant they've been throughout the regular season. They finished top of the log, miles ahead of everyone every single year, and have crashed and burned in the playoffs. And they've really got to do it. And I think you know, I think they probably will, which is unfortunate. But the injury list at Glasgow is massive, and you kind of look at, again, you're talking about Nigel Carolan talking about the injury list there, and they're saying that Hugh Jones is close. It's just his Achilles is something they're going to have to manage. So they've got he's had an injection in it, and he's not training on Tuesday, but he'll maybe train Wednesday, Thursday, and they've got to kind of manage it through the Lions tour and stuff like that. You just think, do you risk playing him if it's like that? Not because of the Lions, but because he could blow out his Achilles and he loses a year of his career at a time where he can't afford a year of his career because he's, you know,
31.
So much of his game is about pace.
Yeah.
And powerful stepping, you know, to elude tacklers, and I don't think you could risk his Achilles at this stage.
No, especially not with Stafford McDowell there. You know, I just think, I mean, all things being equal, you pick Hugh Jones and Tui Pelota as your two centres, but I think Stafford McDowell's more than. And
they look great. The centre pairing looked great at the weekend.
Yeah.
I thought Sione he's back to his best already. I mean, for a man who's been out for so long, he's come back in. It's like he's not been away.
Yeah. I think where Franco would possibly take a gamble is up front in some of the areas, because I think they are. They're missing a lot of big men, key men up front. Well, actually, not as many as they were. I mean, they've got Cummings back now.
No, they're coming back. They are dripping back in. They definitely are. But I think but ultimately, I don't see them winning this game. No. It was a big farewell at Scotstoun for a number of players, probably most notable being Tom Jordan, Henko Venter and Jack Mann, who are moving on. And interestingly, Henko and Franco revealed that they weren't too happy about him moving on. Is that right? Yeah, well, Franco Smith's been kind of nibbling at this for a while. You know, he's kind of pointed to the new policy at Scottish Rugby, the SRU, which is, Franco's kind of presented it a bit as, we're not sending overseas players, they've got to be Scottish qualified players. And Henko, who was it a month ago, 2 months ago, it was announced that he's moving to Brive. He's 32, 33 years old, South African, non-Scottish qualified flankers moved to, but he's been great. He's been great since he's come here for 2 years, and so it's just quite interesting because he's an absolute gentleman, gentle. I don't want to stereotype South Africans, but he's one of these Christian South Africans that's so polite and so and I wasn't actually at the press. He did press duty on Monday, and the quotes weren't massively strong, but he made it clear. I'd have liked to have stayed, but the policy is, so I wish them all the best on that. So he kind of hinted or suggested that he was pushed out rather than the other way around. And just since then, there's been a bit of a scramble from Murrayfield, who have kind of let it be known, or just there's been a bit of a phone round the journalists that were there to say. That's not the case. The policy isn't that we're not signing Scottish qualified players. We're certainly, compared to the past, you have to make a stronger case for it. It's not. There was a time when there's a gap there. We'll just sign a guy from wherever. It doesn't matter. And
we knew that was going to change when Nusafora came in because he was very strong on that with Ireland when he was in Ireland. And so I think Murrayfield's not very happy that the suggestion is that Henkel couldn't stay, Henkel wasn't going to be allowed to stay. I think it was maybe that it never got to that point. I think Henkel, and I don't know, I'm speculating now, Henkel maybe saw the writing on the wall because of the way they're talking, because of the way that they're talking, perhaps said to his agent, what else is going on out there? He's gone to Brive have come in for an offer. And this is me speculating, I don't know. And, Brive have given him an offer, so in the SO you've decided they can't match that, or they've decided, well, let's let him go because we have a lot of Scottish back row guys coming through. We've got, Matt Fagerson, Jack Dempsey, Rory Darge. You've already got an overseas guy, Sione Vilanu. You've got Gregor Brown. You've got Ewan Ferry, and maybe they've just decided. Anyway, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but there seems to be a wee bit of a disconnect there between Murrayfield and Glasgow on how this policy, which is it's just not as an open door. It's not an open door for overseas players, non-Scottish qualified players. Sorry, like overseas is as there was in the past, and there seems to be a slight bit of tension there. So it's a bit of interesting background. I mean, I'm quite amazed. I'd be amazed if there hadn't been a frank conversation between the two camps, and that they weren't all on the same, not on the same page, but they all understood where the other half was coming from. Because, I mean, it's the modern world. You've got email, you've got WhatsApp. Surely you can explain it. So it was just interesting that there was a wee bit of pushback from Murrayfield about Henkel making that point, and Henkel made that point. I mean, poor Henkel. I suspect he didn't mean to cause a storm, and he's maybe just tried to stress the point that I think he has loved living.
He
in
loved
Edinburgh.
it here, yeah.
And I think so. Maybe he was, so maybe there's a wee bit just a cultural. It's not language, but he was just trying to say, I'd love to have stayed, but I saw the writings on the wall, and it's been interpreted differently. He's had his first child, Lana, who I'm presuming is a girl, Scottish born. So there is a Scottish qualified.
Absolutely. Watch out for her.
Yeah, exactly. So
18 years or so.
Yeah. So, but it's an interesting policy because you mentioned the guys leaving. Seb Cancellieri didn't play. He wasn't selected, but I mean he's another guy that's really added value. And I don't think
a great player. Yeah,
exactly. And I don't think anybody. I mean, I'm one of the guys that has made a noise about us signing too many overseas players, and in the past I have been accused of being, one-eyed and only wanted Scottish guys to play, and that's genuinely not the case. But I think, I think if we're bringing guys in, they have to. We've only got 2 pro teams, and these pro teams are loss-making. They're there to, ultimately, fundamentally, the only justification is that they support the national team, which makes the money for us. And I think in the past it has been far too lax. I don't think there's been any strategy about it. So I think if that's the way they've gone, it's a good thing. And I'm sure they will be. But it's interesting because I think you could have made a strong case for keeping Henkel and for Cancellieri. Easily, you could have made a strong case, and I don't think anyone would have argued with that. But Edinburgh signed Piers O'Connor, who's not Scottish qualified. So like it's clearly not a hard line. No, and actually, Nusaforo was very clear about that when he's spoken in the past, that it's not a hard line, but there's got to be a strong case. There's got to be reasons for it.
On the URC, sorry, I was getting lost there. The Munster Sharks game.
Yeah.
Of all the other games that happened, that one was particularly entertaining for a number of reasons. It went to a penalty shootout, and there was some incredible shithousery from the Sharks players.
Yeah.
Talk me through your thoughts on that game.
I loved it. I thought it was like, I loved the penalty shootout is like great fun. I'm not sure. I think we should do something like that. I'm not sure it's the right solution. Yet. Because you have a penalty shootout in football, but that's like the point of football is to put the ball in the net. So like it's kind of it's as good a test as you can get is like who should go through here. But actually the point, most rugby players, the point isn't of their existence isn't to kick the ball over the post. So I'm not convinced that it's the best way to do it, but it was brilliant drama. I think what they should do is they should take a player off every 5 minutes from both teams. Okay. And it goes down and down and down until you're like down to like 2v2. Like
1-on-1.
Yeah, 1-on-1. Yeah, totally. And there's a lot of strategy coming to that, because imagine like you ended up in a situation and it was something like, I don't know, like you had Andrew Porter for Leinster against George Horn, because you're back. Yeah. It's like what one strategy is go for the wee fast guy, and the one is like it's a power game, and it would probably be who got the ball. I don't know it's how you restart the game, isn't it? Who get the
You
ball
could
and
do,
restart
you could do like circuit stations. So
Yeah.
in one station you have like a scrummaging competition,
Yeah.
and then almost like sumo wrestling, can you push each other out of the circle?
Yeah.
Then you could have like a line-out competition, and then you could have a kicking competition, and then you could have longest pass.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It becomes a circus.
Yeah, a one-on-one scrummaging. You could say like it's got to be one-on-one scrummaging, but it's got to be like one prop, a props competition.
Oh, the
like
shame!
a back row.
Imagine the individual shame that you would carry that you got knocked out of the competition because you got scrummed backwards.
Yeah, that's right. I would put myself forward to kick, even though I'd probably fail. I wouldn't put myself forward for something like that. So,
David John Eels Barnes.
Yeah, but anyway, it was good. I thought it was great entertainment. And it was massive shithousery from Munster.
That was incredible.
Which was hilarious. The bit that interested me was, I don't know if you saw Jim Hamilton got quite stroppy on social media. And he was like telling everybody, like obviously there was loads of whining about it, especially from the Munster and the Irish people, and everybody thinks it's hilarious, like Munster complaining about a bit of shithousery, apart from them, right? But I was quite surprised that Jim was quite dogmatic about it. He's like, that's an embarrassing attitude. This is brilliant. You should be criticising it. But actually, like that's the whole point of it, isn't it? Like the fact that Jaden Hendricks was winking and it got everyone furious. If it didn't make people furious, then it wouldn't be as much fun. So like, don't tell people not to be angry about it. Just say, ha, 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 laugh at them, wind them up, but don't tell them it's a bad to have a strong opinion on it, because
Suddenly,
that's what we want.
all the exposure and the hits for the game and everything about it has just gone through the roof because of this incident. So,
Yeah, but I just think Jim should encourage people to debate it rather than saying, well, of course it's a good thing, so shut up. You should say, you think it's a bad thing, why? And then we're talking about it still. So that I know where he's coming from, because I think guys, like quite a few guys in the media do that. They get frustrated because, I mean, and I didn't see it. I don't know if you saw the tweet that he said, I've seen some really ridiculous tweets. He said, that's embarrassing. And then one of the tweets he said, there's been I've seen so many complaints. I've seen racism. Now, if there's been racism, then like I'm on team Hamilton with that. But if he's just saying stop whining about it, that's embarrassing. Let them whine about it and then slag them back. But let's encourage that. But I mean, he was out of line. I think Jaden Hendricks was out of line. But
he was.
Yeah,
but I also love the fact Ryan Wilson was talking. He's like, if I'd been on that field, he'd have been getting one arm and dragged away with his cramp. And he would have done that as well. It would have been great. That would have sent it through the roof if that had happened. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. So you can condemn it without being. You can condemn it, but still be glad it happened. Especially because you're not a Munster fan.
As a neutral, it was incredible theatre.
Yeah,
because that's what it was. It was theatre. Getting that wink caught on camera the way it did. It wasn't even like we had to watch a replay of it. It was the camera was right on his face, live as he gives the wink. Absolutely brilliant.
I really hope Sharks are at Thomond the first game of next season. I really hope.
It'll be amazing. Absolutely amazing. The URC schedulers get that sorted out immediately.
Yeah. Just before we move on from that, I thought the bit that was overlooked was his brother's penalty. Was it his brother that took the penalty just before the one that won it? Yeah, it was his brother's. Like, what a penalty. Did you see it? Like, it was like...
It was a monster.
Yeah. I think it got, we'd all been talking about that. What a great penalty if he had... So, yeah. He stole his brother's thunder as well there, but...
Yeah, that was great. It was great. So, just following on from our Sevens chat last week, you interviewed James Fleming for the site. James is a veteran of 45 Sevens tournaments for Scotland, and incredibly, I loved this stat, which I'd forgotten or hadn't realised from the article, that he scored 112 tries in a near 10-year career for Scotland. So there's no doubt that he's among some of the best guys around to offer an opinion on Sevens. Can you give us a kind of précis of your chat with him?
Yeah, so, I mean, the background to it is I bumped into him at Melrose Sevens. I didn't know James before, actually, and we chatted away for ages. He was chatting away and he was full of, opinions about it. And in the end, I'd say, and I was thinking, oh, this is a good story. He's like, do you know that I write about rugby? Because I wasn't sure that he did, because I think he just thought it was a guy at Melrose that he was just getting off, because Jimmy Johnson had introduced me, and he did. And I said, well, do you want to do an article about it? And he said yes. So that was the background to it. So I actually met him on Saturday morning after my Friday at that one.
God, when you're a man made of dust.
Well, no, I think I showed great fortitude.
And professionalism.
Professional fortitude.
You showed something.
I was about 15 minutes late and I had to lie and say there was bad traffic coming out of Edinburgh. We met at Dobie's. But yeah, so we had a great long chat, about an hour chatting away about rugby, and he's a smart guy. He's got an MBA. He's now director of Lovett Mill down in Hawick, and I think he was always a guy that had an opinion when he was part of the Scotland Sevens squad. Maybe kind of not annoyed, but probably challenged coaches, challenged the SRU, and he's still the same. So he's not really actively involved beyond a bit of like coaching his kids' mini team, playing the odd bounce team. But it was just really interesting because, I think it's interesting because it's a big call, but he's saying we need to go back to Scotland Sevens. Now, Scotland Sevens cost money to. We've never really known how much money it costs. But, the background to this, in case people, are coming into it fresh, is we ran the Scotland Sevens squad for, maybe it must have been just over 10, 12 years. Played on the World Series, had some success, had, other times we didn't have a lot of success. They tried to get rid of it in 2015, the SRU. It got leaked to the press. The press wrote about it. There was a huge outcry, and the Sevens was reprieved, but it was kind of stay of execution rather than, a reprieve, as I just said there, because they'd bowed to public pressure rather than they suddenly decided it was worthwhile. Anyway, James had hung up his boots. He hung up his boots in 2018, but in 2022, the World Rugby apparently mandated. They decided to have a rethink about how they were doing their sevens. Sevens got into the Olympics, and they mandated that Wales, England, and Scotland should join together as a Team GB, and it'd be part of the qualification process for the Olympics every 4 years. And the Scottish Sevens was disbanded. So Scotland did feed into that. I think there was 6 in the men's team. There was 6 in the first ever core squad. It was down to 2 before it got disbanded. But basically, the Sevens has been kind of badly run, badly managed over that, throughout this period, and we could talk a wee bit more about that. And news came out a couple of weeks ago, which we wrote about in the Offside Line, which is they've now got rid of the core squads, and it's basically it's going to be ad hoc from now on. They're going to call guys up from the different nations to play in the tournament. They'll play, they'll go home, and they might get called back to the next tournament. But there's no core squads, so there's no development to it, or there's no kind of real performance aspect to it. Well, it's probably because there'll be performance players, but they're getting called in on a tournament basis, and it's really just a further marginalisation of sevens at international level in this part of the world. Yeah, so there's been issues with how the World Series is being run, because a few years back, World Rugby decided to. It used to be run on a host venue basis. So if the RFU ran at Twickenham, they would try and make money out of it. They made money out of it, then they could do with what, usually they'd pump it back into their sevens programme or whatever they want to do with it. But World Rugby decided that they quite fancied a piece of that pie, so they basically took it and they organised it all themselves. And they're not an events organisation, they're a federation, they're a governing body, and they don't seem to have done a great job. So the whole thing's, the sevens thing's not really, it's kind of gone off the boil, I think, which is really heartbreaking because, it's in the Olympics. It was a huge success at the Paris Olympics, and various other things. But anyway, long story short was that the Irish Rugby Union about 2 weeks ago declared that they were killing their sevens programme, having been pretty successful. They came into
the
it
men's.
late. Yeah.
I think they're keeping the women's one. In Ireland.
And GB kind of follows suit, but they've now announced that they are going to tournament by tournament basis. So it's just there's no core squad. They're going to call people up for the men's and women's on a tournament by tournament basis. So it's not really performance. It's not it's not development. It's just going to drift a wee bit. But anyway, James had a lot of views on this. He's been involved in it. He's a smart guy. But the interesting was his take on it is that this is an opportunity for Scottish Rugby. Scottish Rugby should go back in and say we're going to run our own programme. If UK don't want to do it, then why don't we run it? There's challenges with that because can you get into the World Series if World Rugby are saying that they want it to be part of the Olympic qualification process? Would Team GB give up their space to Scotland? So the whole thing's. I'm not sure how that would work, but I think it's an interesting point that he's making was, from his experience, he thinks, I suspect, I don't know, I'll put words in his mouth, that people didn't really appreciate how much value the Sevens programme added to Scottish Rugby, not just in terms of giving the Darcy Grahams and the Magnus Bradburys and the George Horns, particularly George Horn and Darcy Graham, who were guys who don't have the physical profile to necessarily, of the modern professional rugby player, but definitely offer something different. I think they didn't know what to do with Darcy when he came out of the under-20s, and he went across and he got some valuable game time. So, it's helped players, and it's helped the Magnus Bradbury. He was in the squad, he was involved. Blair Kinghorn's been involved. Jamie Ritchie's been involved. So it helped that. But, his point would be it's also done other things. Like, you had another professional programme in Scotland. So they used to train against the national team. They used to train, they used to lend players to Edinburgh and Glasgow. They did all this sort of stuff. So it's just quite an interesting article. But there's two parts to that article, because in the course of that conversation I had with him, he also pointed out one of our fellow pods, The Good, the Bad and the Rugby, had Mike Friday on, and who was the former England, Kenya, USA Sevens coach, and he had a lot of the insight into about how World Rugby's mismanaged, if we're being brutally honest, the World Series. So I did that as a kind of separate article. I kind of shamelessly ripped off The Good, the Bad. I gave him a lot of credit for it, but basically I've quoted him at length. So I think there's the two really good articles that sit next to each other, which is, from my point of view, James talking about why he thinks it's really important or it's an opportunity for Scotland to really embrace having a performance sevens programme again, as opposed to Team GB, where you've got a couple of guys that are in the core squad, but that, what does that really do for Scottish rugby? And next to that, an article explaining or asking questions about why can they not make sevens, international sevens, a financial success. It's got all the bits and pieces that should be, it's a more simple game, it's short format, it's TikTokable, it's got all these things, great venues, all these things, and what's going on, that it's not a success. So I think it's quite an interesting article, but I wrote it, I'd have to say that.
No, it's a great article. Go and check it out on the Offside Line.
Yeah.
Do you know what any budding young sevens players should do, especially if they're in the Edinburgh area this summer?
They should
go to Village Health and Wellness Clubs, Edinburgh. Get their summer body ready. They can enjoy a club stacked with premium kit, brand new box and burn studio for the ultimate combat style workouts, which is what you need for sevens. Plus spanking new bikes in the group cycling studio, ready for action. You can gym, swim, throw shapes, or get your chill on from just £50 per month, and you can be sevens ready, Barney, as well as summer ready.
That was magnificent, Birds. That is brilliant. That is, you're top of the class. You're top of the class. Well done. And it's all true. It's all true.
It is true. That is true. It's what we need. It's what you need. And you can wear short sevens shorts. So there you are. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing, just before we move on from that, Burns, I want to jump back in. It's interesting because Colleen Barretto, who was actually a Scottish guy from Dundee, and he was part of the sevens programme. He was a kind of kid when James was finishing up, I think, and he was in the Team GB sevens programme. He was captain. He's injured at the moment, but he was captain of it last season. And he's kind of got a different take on it, so that's quite interesting because, he's responded to a few things. James resharing his article on social media and his view, and he's posted on LinkedIn himself that he's more for saving the Team GB sevens programme, and he's got his own reasons for that. So I think the point I was going to make is, James is very focused on the Scotland sevens and what he thinks it can deliver for Scottish rugby. Callum's focused on the Team GB and what it can deliver, and making the point that that's actually the way World Rugby are looking at it. So really, maybe that's... But I think where they'd both be on the same page is the value sevens can offer to individual players and potentially to marketing the game. And the big important thing that I maybe didn't mention there is it's not just marketing the game, it's marketing the game in areas that aren't rugby strongholds. It's going to places where realistically you're kidding yourself if you think people are going to buy into 15s or going to be able to buy into 15s. So I think it's a topic that's going to rumble actually for over the summer.
I tell you what is a topic that's going to rumble for through the summer and way, way beyond. So, hot off the heels of the Nations Cup chat that we had last week, one of the biggest stories in the game's history has reared its head again. So, a few months ago, rumours started circulating about a swathe of high-profile players signing contracts for a new breakaway tournament, which would kick into effect if the tournament fulfilled certain ownership, financial and broadcasting criteria. And we have some more meat on the bones in terms of details about this. So it's understood that team owners from the Premier League, Formula One and NFL have submitted bids to buy franchises in a revolutionary competition called R360, with claims that it's due to be launched next year. So it's basically kind of like the Seventh Circuit actually, and inspired by the travelling circus that's F1 and the franchise model of cricket's Indian Premier League. the concepts for like a kind of Grand Prix style league that features 8 men's franchises and a 4-team professional women's competition, which would travel the world playing in stadiums like the Spurs Stadium, which is incredible, the revamped Camp Nou in Barcelona, talking about host cities in Paris, Los Angeles, Tokyo, Buenos Aires, and Cape Town are all mentioned. R360 has vowed to unlock the potential of the women's game, they say in the statement, with American superstar Ilona Maha featuring on the promotional material. It's headed up by England World Cup winner Mike Tyndall, former Bath player and director of rugby Stuart Hooper, and Mark Spoors, a former agent who ran the rugby division of Wasserman, who are sports agents. The head of legal, John Lafhagen, worked for the IPL and for Live Golf, although it has been pointed out that the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, which supports Live Golf, is not involved here. And neither is any kind of sovereign wealth fund anywhere. Tyndall says in the prospectus for R360, it's being launched as a response to a club game that has failed to capture the same level of interest and investment as the international rugby. Clubs around the world are feeling the strain and are being propped up by the international game, he says. Rugby's lack of innovation and ability to change risks losing its appeal to new audiences and its younger market. The R360 name, for listeners, is a reference to the number of players the league is aiming to recruit. They're saying that they reckon around 40 players will earn over £1 million a year on this new tournament. Currently, a handful, maybe half a dozen, earn that now. Finn Russell being one of them, but Antoine Dupont must be doing it. I reckon Sia Khaleesi's probably up there. Someone like Richie Mo'unga in Japan's probably somewhere up there, and maybe someone like Eben Etzebeth is, commanding that kind of fee. Marcus Smith is probably maybe up near that. So, but there's not many, but they're reckoning 40 will do that, and then the other 320 players will still be getting paid very, very well. So the fixtures, what they wanted to build is kind of like the NFL when they come to London. They want to kind of have concerts and other entertainment in a kind of festival feel around the games in each host city. And the season would run in 2 chunks from April to June and then August to September, so that all players are available for test rugby from the Six Nations, and also in the summer and then in the autumn. All kind of requires approval from World Rugby. David Barnes, is this an exciting new frontier, or is this snake oil being sold?
I feel like you always make me sound. I always feel like these things come up, and I'm always like, it's not like good old days. Get them down to Mansfield Park and play in the mud. I think it's it sounds great when you say it there in a sense, but there's a lot of meat to put on those bones. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, Mike Tyndall says it's stepping in where club rugby's failed. It's reliant on international rugby. Is it not just trying to take over international rugby? Really, I mean, I know they're saying not, but really, they are. Mm-hmm. Basically, if you're creating an international league,
if you want they kind of want to have a Super Bowl moment as well. So if you're having a Super Bowl moment and you're having all the best players playing in a kind of IPL style league, you're taking over. Yeah. And I go back to the boring bit, and it's the same problem with LIV. It's all about how much money you can make for the players, and I don't begrudge players making a good salary, but is there anything in there about investment in developing the game? And there's not, because you're expecting the unions to carry on funding the clubs to carry on doing that, and you'll just pick people off. And I'm not sure that I'm not sure that's sustainable. I'm not sure that's good for the sport necessarily. I mean, they're always talking about like this is structured so that the players can go back and play Test rugby. Quite a major flaw in that whole thing is that the England players, for example, have just signed a new 8-year deal with the RFU, stipulating that they can only pick players playing in the Premiership as part of that deal. So that's quite a major flaw to announce all this with those kind of ambitions. Like a month after that deal's been announced.
Yeah, totally. And I'm
the
dubious
of the same policy,
Yeah, And I'm dubious about this thing that you're really going to get buy-in these travelling circuses. It's going to turn up in one city. Is everyone going to one city and playing there one week?
Yeah,
and then
they're
they're
all
going
playing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like F1. So you turn
Right.
up in that city, or it's like the Sevens. It's like the Sevens, as we mentioned earlier. You're going to LA, and you're playing. All the teams are playing there.
Yeah. And how many teams? 12 teams.
Eight men's franchises and a 4-team professional women's competition. So the idea is you get franchise owners for the men's team, and they've said that the women's game would be like internally funded to begin with, and then they would look to sell them as well.
So there's a couple of things that jump to mind there. James Haskell said in that The Good, the Bad and the Ugly podcast, he was kind of pulling his hair out and saying, it infuriates him that, we've made such a bad job of using sevens to market the game to new audiences because it's simple, it's easy to understand. It sounds like they're trying to do, and he said, instead we're trying to do it with 15s, which is harder to understand, and it's not that, it's for the people that are really into rugby. That's like the kind of, sevens is, I think what he was getting as, sevens is the, I was going to use a drug analogy that's your gateway drug, and then you move on to, you move on to the hard stuff. That's probably not very family friendly. And it feels to me like they're saying, let's try and create this sevens type tournament, traveling tournament. But who in LA or in Barcelona is going to want to watch 8 teams or 12 teams or 6 matches all in one weekend? I get that a few people might travel to it, but the locals aren't going to be that interested in it. And so it's I think we talked about it, it's another made for TV, if it works, product. And I don't think that's great for sport, really. I think sport is meant to be lived for watching on TV, but it's meant to be lived in the flesh. It just seems like Formula One works because it's Formula One. Rugby doesn't work as Formula One, is what I think. And so once again, I'm saying stick to what we know.
No.
Stick to what we know.
Yeah, I can't look down on the ambition.
Yeah.
And they seem to actually not just having come up with you and I have talked about, what would be part of our summer homework is restructuring the league or the restructuring the season and what would be our dream way of doing it. And these guys
you just reminded me that I've not done this yet. But
you've not done this. We'll do it in
yeah.
the summer. It's fine. We've got plenty of time. But these guys are going out and finding what seems to be genuine people who want to get on board with this.
Yeah. A speculation at this point, isn't it? Though it's like
it's right back to the Kerry Packer days, isn't it? Of 1995, the game goes pro. He has this whole exactly like this, he called it it was the Kerry Packer Circus. They called it, wasn't it? Where they were going to have exactly this thing, franchises based around the world, and this tournament goes around the world, and they were going to have an elite selection of players playing in it, and it was all good. Everyone had signed contracts for it, and it was all going ahead. The only ones that held out were the Springboks, and they were world champions. And basically, a lot of people have blamed Francois Pienaar. Got a very good offer, allegedly from the let's put that in there quickly. Allegedly from the South African Rugby Union to sign on with them, and when he signed on, there was a domino effect through the Springboks, and as soon as the world champions were not in, the whole thing collapsed. So here we are, exactly 30 years later, and this whole concept is bubbling up again.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how the game should have gone in 1995, but it didn't, and we're here. But then who knows, Barney? Maybe we'll look back on this moment in 30 years and we'll think, wow, that was an incredible moment of entrepreneurial genius. They've gone and they saved the game and changed it, and we've now got this incredible world-dominating product that everybody loves.
Yeah, I'm not holding my
We're
breath on that
hopefully
one.
flying on hydrogen, because otherwise we're adding to global warming with all these flights that everyone's going to be doing.
Yeah. And are these teams? Do they have any geography at all? I mean, is it going to be the Edinburgh?
No,
Eagles
I've not. To be fair, I've not seen the prospectus, but I presume it's going to be like. Well, maybe they must have to do something, surely. Maybe not. Maybe they'll just be like the Sony Wild Bills or the Red Bull Knights or something like that, and then it's just like every team's like a barbarians team.
Do people really support that? Do people?
I think it's hard not having a home crowd, because otherwise you just have to randomly pick a team that you look at and you think that they're going to be my boys and my girls.
Yeah, and I don't like it. It's and you imagine, and we're saying the club game isn't working like it could. Although the English club game's got a bit of a problem because they've not really it's been the Wild West. I mean, well, obviously the unions aren't going to be for it, but Glasgow and Edinburgh are beginning to. Glasgow further down the road, they're building up fans. I mean, imagine Robbie's a season ticket holder at Edinburgh. You just say, right, well, that's actually rubbish now, Robbie. Going to support the Mitsubishi. It just seems crap to me.
The Mitsubishi Submariners, and they just have like a kind of submarine on there.
And then they go around and you watch them play in an empty stadium. It's rubbish. When you watch the South Africa game, games over in South Africa, they're half-empty stadiums. It's crap. It's boring. Where's the colour? I just
the tribalism is essential, and that's you're going to lose that if you can't just create that, and you can't create it. If they don't have, they must have to have some kind of home team. But maybe each of the host venues get a team. But you're going to be struggling to start to get comparing the. I mean, I don't even know what the Paris Chevaliers versus the LA somethings. But I think the LA team's going to be struggling to build their fan base, while the Parisian one might. They've got something there.
Yeah.
But,
it feels to me like it feels to me like they look at you look at football. They look at football. They want the best bit of football, which is loads of money. They want all the money out of football. And they're going, the tribalism bit's a bit harder to manage, so we'll just, or the kind of identity or history, that's a bit too hard to manage. We'll just do the money bit. And the reason that football, you took the Premier Division, part of the reason the Premier Division makes shitloads of money is because it's got big investors from Dubai and America and whatever. But the reason, we could get into what they're up to, what their motivations are for that. But the reason everybody loves the Premiership English football is history, identity, rivalries, character, and I think these guys are looking at it and going, we want the best bit, take the money out of it, and the other bit, that's not that important. And I don't believe that bit's not important. And I think actually the sport would be a sadder sport if that's what we ended up with.
Yeah, I mean, no one gives a shit about live golf.
No.
They don't.
Yeah.
And they've tried to do that same format of creating teams with team captains, and they have these, and it's like no one gives a shit.
The only one that's really worked is IPL 2020 League.
Yeah, but they put it all in
cities, in one country, in one cricket mad country where they've all got their own base, and they've worked really hard to create this buzz around it.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's just.
And they've tried to replicate that in the UK with the 100 and things like that, and it's not worked. There's something very unique about the IPL. And it looks brilliant, playing at night time, all the colours, and they do fireworks as they come out. It's a fast-paced game, but also it helps. You've got like 1 billion people who are absolutely insanely mad for it. You can't replicate that in this.
No. And I'm highly dubious, fair enough, there's all these big rich people. I'm assuming
I
these
suspect
men, but
it's
these
probably
rich
men, yes.
Yeah. That are ready, that have said, I'll put my money where my mouth is if you get this off the ground. That's a big difference from saying we're investing in this, So we've seen it before. I'll be honest with you, I hope it doesn't work, because I think it'd be crap. I think it's trying to end. I don't think the players do need to be paid more. I think the players, top players are paid pretty well. They don't get paid as well as rugby players, but they're not on the poverty street. So, and part of the reason that rugby is in the mess it is because we're struggling to control their wages. And I'm not saying cut their wages, but coming up with this new league where we're going to get everybody in by paying them even more wages, that's just money out of the sport. Which is so. I hope it, and it means all the money is going towards 360 players. They've even said that 360 players are going to get all this cash that might or might not exist, and we still expect the unions and clubs who are just shafted here to keep on producing players. And what would happen there is the clubs and unions go, we can't produce players at the same level we did, or some of them will say, we're not even going to bother trying to produce players. There's less and less players, and it becomes this distant, boring, made-for-TV, non-entity event. Get it in the jail. Get in the jail, Burnsy.
Well,
that's
the
what I
idea
say.
is one of the big provisos is getting a big broadcast deal. That's just not going to happen.
No.
No.
The broadcast deals are all going down the pot because like this but they can't get broadcast deals because there's too many. Like that's the direction of travel for TV broadcast sports deals is downwards. So that's just it's pie in the sky.
It is pie in the sky. You've said it. Barney says no.
Yeah.
Burnsy says no.
Like
Yeah.
Burns. Yeah. I thought you might. I had a funny feeling you were reading it there. It's just because you did your homework. I had a funny feeling you were going to be all for it, Burnsy. I'm glad that you're not.
In many ways, there is the snake oil salesman's charm about the whole thing, which you kind of go, is this the new bright future that could, make rugby a commercial success? But it's not. It's not.
No.
Just, you need tribalism and identity. Like Munster against the Sharks. There's so much tribalism and passion for Munster rugby that they are kicking aff about what's happened. And they're absolutely they're demented about it. But that's because they love their team so much. Yeah. That would just be a hilarious circus sideshow that we'd be like, oh yeah, he's clowning around, winking. It's like, you're suddenly Wolf from Gladiator. And there's nothing actually of consequence behind it. And you're like, oh, look at that. Well, he's getting paid £1 million a year. He should probably, get his electrolytes in him so he doesn't cramp. Or it's clearly he has been the pantomime villain, but it's not this is not real. This is WWE suddenly. It slips into a different thing altogether. And it's just, I like the ambition. I think, credit where it's due. Great creativity, fair play, actually putting out an announcement and getting all these contracts. The money they must have spent doing the contracts. But again, the legal ramifications, like rugby is, I suppose, the only benefit from their point of view is unlike football, where you don't get players tied in for like 7 years in a contract. You sign like a 1 or 2 year contract, 3 year contract, and most probably. But if the contracts that they've allegedly signed with this new organisation, R360, says that if they hit certain criteria of franchise ownership, broadcast deals, and having the finance in place, that will activate their contracts. But what about their existing contracts? You're going to have to somehow get them out of them, and nobody's going to want to relinquish that for free. So you'd have to wait for them to all come out of contract before you could start, and that's just going to be all over the place globally.
Yeah. But I'm with you. Like anything that actually, because there is a lack of clarity about what rugby should be like going forward. So something like this, if it shakes World Rugby and the RFU and the SRU and whoever else into thinking, right, how do we EPCR, because like they need to get like the earlier stages of the Heineken Cup sorted out because it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant last 3 weeks, but the first it's crap. So if it shakes them into rugby isn't well run at the moment. Rugby isn't well structured at the moment. So if these guys coming along and threatening to steal them all away makes these guys pull their finger out, and I hope it does, then it's not the end of the world, is it? Yeah.
No. Right, well, that's a kind of nice positive spin on things, Barney.
You know me, I'm a positive kind of guy.
That's you every week, Barney. Right, let's leave it there. A massive thank you again to Village Health and Wellness Clubs Edinburgh for their support for this week's episode. And you can join them for £50 a month, which is an absolute bargain, and you will get in great physical and mental fitness by doing that, and you'll just feel great for the summer. You'll look good, you'll feel good, everything's going to be good. The sun's going to come out again, and we're going to have a great summer. So thank you very much to them for their support. Barney, great podding. I'm going back to the bright lights of Nottingham in my Premier Inn room now to edit this pod. I am going back into the Lion's Den tomorrow with 2 more school tours, speaking to 240 kids in the morning and 200 odd in the afternoon as well. I hope I survive that. And
good luck.
I will speak to you next week, mate.
Excellent. Thanks for your time, Burnsy. Sorry for
And
interrupting
my book comes out Thursday, everyone. Please, Thursday the 5th. Please buy Shadow Thieves. That'd be great.
Where should people go to
Well,
buy it online?
you can get it absolutely anywhere. There's a special sprayed edge signed edition on Waterstones, which is available now, but it's going to be in all Waterstones, your local bookshop. Hopefully, it's on Amazon. It's very excitingly going to also be in Sainsbury's. It's going to be in 134 Sainsbury's shops as well.
Nice.
So you can get it there and hopefully buy it everywhere. And please put me on the bestseller lists. And then maybe I can become as rich as J.K. Rowling and I can buy rugby and I will do it the proper way with our new season structure, Barney. We'll sort it all out.
Sounds good.
And
Excellent.
you can come watch rugby at the Pete Burns Dome in Edinburgh.
I thought that's what they called the top of your head, Burnsy.
Yeah, well, it will look like me. That's the beauty.
The Pete Burns Dome. Right.
Okay,
Right.
I'll see you next week.
Thanks, mate. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
It's the offside line.
This is not soccer. Is that clear?
Utmost danger. Danger could be there. Fuck, it's a try. A magnificent try for the 21-year-old.